Hey everybody. So we are looking at 4.2 part 1 today titled Transversals and Parallel Lines. All right. So we're getting into parallel lines today and what happens when a transversal crosses over a parallel line. So I guess just to get started, first before all of that, go ahead and take a second and get the title here and then go ahead and copy these four definitions and then we'll get into it. So take a moment and do that. Okay, so we're talking about transversals and parallel lines. Let me point out what that means. Okay, so as you guys have probably heard in the past, parallel lines are two lines that do not cross one another. Okay, they go in, side by side. They never cross. That's what it means to have parallel lines. All right. So this would be an example of parallel lines. A transversal is a line that crosses over the parallel lines. Okay, so parallel lines, transversals, that's what it's all about. If you guys notice, what happens when we have a transversal crossing parallel lines is we get a bunch of angles created. All right, we have an angle here, an angle here, here, all right, and all over. We have technically, I guess, 8 angles that are created. All right, and these pairs of angles have different names to them. And that's really what this lesson is all about today. And here are the 4 different types of angles that are going to be created. Okay, so let's just jump through this. The next slide, we'll get into it a bit more, but let's start with what it means to have corresponding angles. Okay, corresponding angles, here's what they do. They lie on the same side of the transversal and on the same side of the intersected lines, okay, or in other words, the parallel lines. Okay, so same side of the transversal, same side of the intersected lines. Let's see what that looks like. Here's a transversal, okay. I know that they would both either be on the left side of the transversal or the right side of the transversal, and then they would also be on the same side of the intersected line. They'd both be either above both or below both. So here's an example of corresponding angles. This angle and this angle, both on the left side of the transversal, both above their parallel lines. Okay, here's another example of corresponding angles. This one and this one. Okay, both on the right side of the transversal, both below the parallel lines. Okay, that's what it means to be corresponding angles. You do not have to immediately know this. We're going to be learning this as we go through this lesson. Okay, moving down the line, we have same side interiors. Okay, here's what they do. Again, they lie on the same side of the transversal, but this time they're between the parallel intersected lines. Okay, so let me show you what same side interiors look like. This would be an example of two same side interiors, this angle and this angle. They're on the same side of the transversal, on the interior of the parallel lines in between them. Okay, so the title of the angles kind of gives you a clue as to how to find them. Same side of the transversal, interior of the parallel lines. Okay, let's look at the next one. Alternate interior angles. Okay, so here's what they do. They are non-adjacent angles, which just means they're not touching one another. But the more important thing is that they lie on opposite sides of the transversal. Okay, and then they are between the intersected lines. Okay, so opposite side of the transversal between the parallel lines. Let me show you an example of alternate interior angles. This angle and this angle would be considered alternate interior. Notice they're on alternate sides of the transversal. One's on the left, one's on the right, and on the interior of the parallel lines. Okay, and then last one is alternate exterior angles. Okay, as you can imagine, it's a lot like alternate interiors, but instead of being on the inside of the parallel lines, they're going to be on the outside. So here's an example of alternate exteriors. This one and this one. Alternate sides of the transversal, exterior, outside of the parallel lines. Okay, and just by the way, here's another example. This one and this one would also be considered alternate exteriors. Okay, so these are really particular words. It's easy to get them mixed up, but we're taking a whole lesson to get used to them. Okay, so the next slide. This is a really good slide to have. This basically has what I just said, just kind of written out. So here's an example of each of the 4 types of angles. Go ahead and take a couple minutes and copy this. This is really important. Okay, so one of the big things to know is that these pairs of angles, they have different, I guess, attributes. Okay, and that's what I want to point out real quick. Corresponding angles, these angles that are on the same side of the transversal, same side of the parallel lines, they are congruent. They are equal to one another. Okay, same measure. If one of them is 40 degrees, the other one's 40 degrees. Okay, the same side interior angles, again, they're on the same side of the transversal interior of the parallel lines. They are supplementary. They add to 180 degrees. Okay, alternate interiors, again, alternate side of the transversal interior of the parallel lines, they are also congruent, like corresponding angles. Okay, and then alternate exteriors are also congruent. Okay, so one just big thing, note to take in mind, all of these angles are congruent to one another except same side interiors. The same side interiors are the weird ones. They're the ones that add to 180. Everything else equal, congruent. Okay, so just start to kind of keep that in mind. All right, so what we're going to do is try out an example where we're going to list all of the different types of angles we have here. Okay, so take a minute, go ahead and copy this down, copy down these 4 categories, and we'll try it together. Okay, so here's the first thing I want to point out. On the last slide, our parallel lines were kind of running, horizontal, and our transversal was kind of going, vertically up and down. Okay, if you guys look at this example here, our parallel lines are actually these lines that are going vertically, and our transversal is the horizontal one. Okay, I just want to kind of have you guys point out, and by the way, I highly suggest if you have like colored pencils or markers or whatever, is always coloring your parallel lines a certain color and then your transversal. I'm always going to use red for parallel and the green line for the transversal. It's a really good thing to start to get your eye to see. Okay, so let's go ahead and list out all the corresponding angles. Okay, here's what we know about corresponding angles. Just a quick reminder. Same side of the transversal, same side of the parallel lines, both above or both below, right? So here's the first corresponding angles I notice. This angle here and this angle here, both above the the transversal, both to the left of the parallel lines. Okay, so angle 1 and angle 5. Let's go ahead and write that in here. Okay, and by the way, I guess I'll leave this in here for now. We'll I guess delete this afterwards. Yeah, so let's go ahead and identify a couple more corresponding angles. Okay, here's the next pair I notice. Actually, I'm trying to think. It's going to get crazy if I have a lot of lines here. So I'm going to delete these. Sorry. Because if I write a bunch of angles on this, this is going to start to look crazy. Okay, so 1 and 5. Here's another pair of corresponding angles. 2 and 6. Okay, both above the transversal, both to the right of the parallel lines. Okay, so angles 2 and 6. Okay, here's another pair of corresponding angles. Angle 3 and angle 7, both below the transversal, both to the left of the parallel lines. Okay, so angles 3 and 7. Okay, and the last pair of corresponding angles. Go ahead, take a second. Guess what they are. Write them on your paper. All right, I'm hoping you're thinking angles 4 and angle 8, both below the transversal, both to the right of the parallel lines. Okay, so there are our corresponding angles. That's all 4 pairs there. All right, let's move on to same side interior. Okay, just a reminder, it's all in the name there. Same side interiors are on the same side of the transversal, both to the either to the left or the right of it, and they're both on the interior of the parallel lines. Okay, inside of it. Okay, so same side interiors. Here's the first pair I recognize: angle 2 and angle 5. Okay, both on the same side of the transversal, both on the interior of the parallel lines. So angle 2 and 5. Okay, there is one other pair of same side interiors. See if you can think of it and write it on your paper. Give it a try. Okay, so I'm hoping that you were thinking, oh, the other angles on the same side of the transversal on the interior of the parallel lines would be angles 4 and 7, both below that transversal, both on the inside of the parallel lines. Okay, and as far as that's concerned, that's it, just 2 pairs of those. Okay, next one, alternate interior angles. Just a reminder, alternate interiors are on alternate sides of the transversal and still on the interior of the parallel lines. Okay, so here's the first pair of alternate interiors that I noticed. Angle 2 and angle 7, both on alternate sides of the transversal. One's on this side, one's on that side, on the interior of the parallel lines, 2 and 7. Okay, there's one more pair of alternate interiors. See if you can find them on your own, write them on your paper. All right, so here's what I'm hoping. You're thinking angles 4 and 5, alternate sides of the transversal, interior of the parallel lines. Okay, and last type we have is alternate exteriors. All right, just like alternate interiors, they're still on alternate sides of the transversal, but this time they're on the exterior of the parallel lines, on the outside of them. All right, so here are the first pair of alternate exterior angles I notice. Angles 1 and 8. Okay, all alternate sides of the transversal, one's above, one's below, and then on the outside of the parallel lines. Okay, there's one more pair of alternate exteriors. See if you can get them down. Okay, here's what I'm hoping you noticed. Angles 3 and 6 are also considered alternate exteriors, alternate sides of the transversal, exterior of the parallel lines. All right, so there are the types of angles. Refer back to this if you need to. This slide and this slide especially are really, really good ones to refer back to anytime you forget these words, because I don't expect you to already know and memorize these things, but hopefully you're starting to get an idea. All right, so I'm gonna have you guys go ahead and try a couple of these problems on your own. Go ahead and copy these two, I guess, parallel lines with transversals, and tell me what we're dealing with on each of these problems. Do we have corresponding angles, same side interiors, or alternate exteriors? All right, one thing I want to point out is just the fact that these on letter A are my parallel lines, and this is my transversal. Okay, if you can make those different colors in your notes, I think it's really helpful. Okay, if you guys take a look at letter B, these are my parallel lines, and this is my transversal. Okay, so with that information on letter A, tell me what these two angles are considered. Which of the 4 types? Okay, and letter B, same idea. What are these pairs of angles considered? Okay, give it a try. All right, so here's what I notice on letter A. These angles here and here are on the same side of my transversal. Okay, and they're also on the same side of my parallel lines. They're both to the left of both parallel lines. Okay, so when it's on the same side of the transversal, same side of the parallel lines, that's when we're dealing with corresponding angles. Okay, which by the way, sometimes you'll see me, I'll just use core as like a shorthand. Okay, but we're writing it all out here just to get used to seeing these words. All right, letter B, here's what I notice. These two angles are on alternate sides of the transversal. One's on this side, one's on the other side, and they're also on the outside or the exterior of my parallel lines. Okay, so alternate sides of the transversal, exterior of the parallel lines. Yep, those are alternate exterior angles. Okay, and let's use the shorthand here. So alternate exterior angles. Okay, and just something to kind of think of when I go to look at these angles. Notice I always first look to see on which side of the transversal they are. Are they both on the same side of the transversal, or are they on alternate sides of the transversal? Okay, when you do that, you can kind of start eliminating things. If they're on the same side of the transversal, I know they're either going to be corresponding or same side interior. They're not going to be alternate interiors or alternate exteriors, right? So I have, 2 options here for this one, and then I can go from there and think, okay, are they on the same side? Are they on the interior of the parallel lines? Well, no, they're not on the interior. They're on the same side. They're corresponding angles. Okay, so that's the way I recommend breaking these problems down. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna, continue to work on these. You're going to have an assignment on this, so please ask me questions if you're still confused on this on the Google Meet, and we'll clarify it. Okay. Okay, guys, have a good one.